Okay, where are my shopping girlies at? Have you ever walked into Target for 2 things and walked out with 20? Put a yes in the comments if this has happened to you. Those little impulse purchases are sneaky little traps for both your wallet and your home, and they add up so much more than we realize. Not that I would know firsthand. So how can you combat impulse shopping? Now, as someone who has completely decluttered her home and also still enjoys to shop, yeah, mic drop, I still like to shop. I'm going to give you some really unique tips today on how to do this so you can create more of this harmonious balance between shopping for what you need and having an uncluttered home. Take it from my student Lucilla, who used to think she could buy her way into a happier life and this time of year buy her way into a merrier Christmas by going out and buying more stuff. And since joining my program earlier this year, she said her mindset has completely shifted. She loves her simplified home and is now able to bypass all these deals and sales and doesn't impulse shop nearly as much. That's what I'm talking about. And the first way to do this is to recognize and identify what your emotional triggers are. Lack of control, boredom, stress, and anxiety, really any negative emotion that we want to stuff down or distract ourselves from can often become a root reason for why we are impulse shopping to begin with. So the next time you're walking down the aisles at Target and you feel this urge to pick up something off the shelf that you know you really don't need, stop, take a moment and pause, and ask yourself, why am I feeling the urge to purchase this? How am I feeling internally inside right now? Again, bored, stressed, angry, frustrated, mad, depressed. What are those feelings? Give them a name. Open up your phone and use the notes tab. How are you feeling? Write it down. Or maybe if you do a lot of your shopping online, the same thing. How are you feeling right before you decide to pick up your phone to browse and ultimately to buy? What is happening in your internal environment? This is so important, and I promise you, within 1 to 2 weeks, you are going to start noticing a pattern. And when we're able to notice that pattern, we're much more likely to be able to break it and do something else. Now let's talk about these external, often physical triggers. In other words, where are you when you tend to do the most impulse shopping? Are you at home on your phone? Are you in your living room? Are you in your kitchen? Are you in your bedroom? What's happening in your physical environment? Is it cluttered? Is it messy? Are you avoiding chores? Are you using impulse shopping as a way to avoid doing a project or handling a tough emotion? You get the idea. Again, it's about finding these different patterns in our environments, internal and external. This reminds me of when I first did this exercise several years ago, because I realized after my husband brought it to my attention, I was buying stuff almost on a daily basis. And because it was under $15 or $20, I didn't really think too much of it, right? It felt very harmless. But boy, oh boy, thousands of dollars later and a lot of clutter later, I realized how wrong I was. And so I recognized what was happening internally and externally. Typically, I tended to do a lot of my impulse shopping when I was sitting in my living room, which was filled to the brim with toys, and I was on the couch nursing my son. Because I felt like I was stuck and I wanted to be productive, I picked up my phone to scroll, and my physical environment, aka the clutter, was stressing me the heck out. So I knew when I pulled up my phone, I was gonna hop on my favorite shopping app to give myself that distraction, really to just escape my reality, the chaotic reality that I was living in at the time. And so through bringing in that self-awareness, I was much more quicker able to break that pattern. And while I was still nursing my son for many months to come, instead of hopping on my favorite shopping apps, which even though I did it, innocently to browse, I always bought anyway, I deleted those from my phone and instead did something to help fill my cup. And for me, that was listening to a podcast or listening to music and doing something way more fruitful with my time. And once you identify the patterns, you can better separate yourself from the urge and then the action. Pause. Or maybe you're someone who's tempted by all the good deals and the deals of the day and all the discounts and sales and whatnot. But let me pose this question to you. Is it a good deal if you weren't planning on getting it? Is it a good deal if you don't really need it? Is it a good deal if that item is ultimately going to be clutter, stealing your time and energy? No. Number 2 is to work to change your habits and behavior. Now, it's not as easy as simply stopping the behavior. It's more about training ourselves to do something else a more positive habit instead of that negative habit of impulse shopping. That ultimately is going to help us lead a more simplistic, uncluttered lives with a heck of a lot more money in our bank accounts. Just like that example of me nursing my son, I still used my phone. I just replaced spending time on certain apps that I knew I would buy from and doing something I really wanted to do, which was listen to an audiobook or a podcast. So ask yourself, what is something I can do with my time that's going to help get me closer to my values and an uncluttered home? Write it out and do more of those things. And the idea here isn't to be perfect. It's never to impulse shop again. I still impulse shop on occasion, but guess what? Sometimes I return those things. It's like, what a novel concept. I think so many of us forget that if we buy something, get it home, maybe we don't love it, whether it was an impulse purchase or maybe it was an intentional purchase, and by the time we get it home, we have a change of heart or realize we don't need it, let's return it to the store. Did you know that if you purchase a new piece of clothing and you haven't worn it in the first 2 weeks, the chances of you ever wearing it are about this big? So return it. Most stores offer a 30-day window. Don't feel like you need to keep it. I think sometimes this is something we all forget. Number 3, you need to set your boundaries around your time, your money, and your space. You can do this in a whole host of ways, but here are just a few ideas. You can set a budget for each month or quarter for different categories of things that will help you be a little more intentional with the way you spend your money. Believe it or not, this is something I had never done when I was impulse shopping. Because again, I was like, oh, it's only $15. But when I looked at the entire budget as a whole, once I did this exercise, I realized I was spending about 4 times more than I thought I was. So I put that budget in place, and guess what? That nipped a lot of it in the bud. And ask yourself, is this a true need or is this just a nice to have? There is a big difference, and often we confuse the two. Have a time limit in place, some type of boundary, like I will wait 24 to 48 hours before buying something. Have a number boundary in place for different categories of things. Maybe you feel like you are good and content with 15 pairs of shoes. So if you really want to get a 16th pair, you have to look at what you have and donate some before you bring in that new pair. So there's all types of limitations we can put on ourselves. And I think the idea is to not make this restrictive, because sometimes when we feel restricted, we just want to do more of what we know we shouldn't be doing. So setting them in a way that makes sense for you and doesn't cause you to go out and run out and go spend $500 at Target is going to be really important. Number 4 is to add in pre-qualifications. This is going to vastly reduce the amount of stuff you buy. And honestly, it's something I wish I did way earlier in my shopping journey. Learn from my mistake. Now I'm going to reference clothes here because a lot of us impulse purchase clothing, but you can apply this toward any category of thing that you tend to just consume too much of. So for clothing, write down requirements that that garment must meet before you purchase said garment. So for me, if you've watched some of my latest videos on the importance of using your best colors in your wardrobe, that is a first thing I shop by. So I use my color card, and if it's not one of my best colors, I don't even consider purchasing it. Now, if it is one of my best colors, then I also look at style and silhouette. I know what works best for me. I know what makes me feel most beautiful and confident. If it doesn't meet those marks, it's not considered. Then the item needs to at least go with 5 to 10 different pieces that I already own in my closet. If you're anything like me, I used to very frequently buy something new only to get it home, put it on, and go through my closet to find something to go with it, to realize I actually needed to go now get a different pair of shoes or a different colored blouse just to match the new pair of pants I got. And it caused this crazy long domino effect of me going out and buying all kinds of stuff just to match this new pair of pants. So again, if it doesn't meet that requirement, not considered. Also, because I'm extremely lazy and don't like taking things to the dry cleaner, if it is dry clean only, you best believe, nope, not getting it. I also need to know where that item is going to live in my closet before I purchase it. Like, do I actually have the space for it? Do I want to give up space for this item? The idea here, putting these qualifications in place, are kind of going in with that last point I made. They go in with the time, space, and money boundaries. And by the time you get to the end of your list, if that garment hits all of those things, great, purchase it and feel good about it. But if it doesn't, let it go. Another reason I used to impulse shop a lot was because I had this massive fear of FOMO. And boy, oh boy, does that cause people to overconsume and overpurchase. So reframe FOMO, which is the fear of missing out, to JOMO. the joy of missing out. The reality is there can be a real honest joy in just being able to say no and to relish in all that we do have. And again, the idea is, at what point is enough? Oftentimes when we're doing these impulse purchases and continually adding stuff to our home, that goalpost of happiness keeps getting further and further away. And so if your idea of happiness is to have the latest, greatest thing, or to continually buy more until you somewhat, miraculously feel satiated or happy or content, the reality is it doesn't work that way, because happiness comes from within. It doesn't come from Target. Sorry, not sorry. And I get it. It might not feel like a joy of missing out if you're walking past that cute pair of boots that you really don't need and you're saying no to that swimsuit you don't need either. And in those moments, instead of focusing on what you lack or kind of wish you had, try noticing and remembering what you already have. And with these tips and tools I've been giving you, think of it as adding more tools to your toolbox. So next time you're feeling tempted at the store or when you're on social media, you can bust out that right tool that's going to help you take a different path, one path that gets you closer to your values, a decluttered home, and a more simplified life. Impulse shopping doesn't have to control your life. Instead, you can take control of it for more time and money and a less cluttered home. But maybe you're a holiday decor shopper though? Click the video on your screen now to learn how to get control of your holiday decor this season.